Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. It's Monday afternoon. We're back, and I'm here with Acsom Rabbani. Hopefully, at some point, Jerry Taylor will also be able to join us for 1 hour of Celtic chat. Acsom, there is plenty to discuss. I mean, there was obviously the whole pre-season where we're looking about for new signings, we're waiting for pre-season matches, but we're right back in the thick of it. And let's talk about some of the positives to start off from Easter Road yesterday. I mean, historically it has been difficult, a difficult hunting ground. We made it look easy in the first half, didn't we?
Yeah, look on the back of the opening day victory against Kilmarnock, everything was really positive. But in the back of my mind, I was looking forward to this game at Easter Road, but also aware that it is a ground that we've struggled at. So I wanted to see if that pre-season form and then the opening day victory, if we could carry that on at a ground that I think for several of the last few seasons we've always dropped points in at least one of the fixtures there, and rarely play well. So that first half, you're right. Let's start with the positives because right from the off, obviously they got the early goal, but some of the football was scintillating stuff. Really, really high tempo, high press, counter press. We're winning the ball back quick, and some really good intricate football. Just carrying on from the week before. So, in terms of on the pitch, really delighted with how some of the players, the guys that we had question marks over, like say Nicholas Kuhn, how is he going to carry on his form? Can he show that consistency? And yeah, he had a brilliant first half, like many of the other players. So in terms of how we're looking right now, it's pretty ominous. We're in good shape. We're playing well, and I think there's a lot to be encouraged about in that sense.
Yeah, we are going to bring Jerry Taylor into the fray, but that's the whole sense of the tagline today. I seen Rodgers Celtic machine is purring. There's a positive, but it now needs turbocharged. And at the weekend, when I was watching the game, and then in the post-match discussion afterwards, there were four of us on there, and that was really the vein of conversation. It was talking about. By the way, we've got something here, but all we need to do now is just to galvanise it. Because I'm going to start off. We'll come back to Nicholas Kuhn. I think that he has shown us a couple of things. Firstly, that players do take a wee bit of time generally to bed in. I seen because obviously we had the Ida effect where it was just hit the ground running and all
Yeah.
this stuff. Kuhn has taken a wee while to settle in, and we know the reasons behind his
Uh-huh.
lack of form, etc. But you're looking at it over the pre-season and thinking to yourself, right, I don't want to get too excited here because he's looking dead good
Yeah.
against strong opposition. But two games in, he's got a goal and assist yesterday. He's now got two goals under his belt in two games. I was looking at last season, 18 appearances, albeit 970 odd minutes, three goals and three assists. So he's already on fire. And I think we've been critical in the past of our wingers not hitting the line, but he seems to come in really effectively, Asim. And then he takes out a man and he keeps doing it sometimes to the point where he's actually bypassed three or four players and he is getting the shots in. And for me, I think he has started off as bright as anybody in the Celtic side.
Yeah, he's one of the players that you're most excited to see at the moment. Everyone spoke about that first half against Man City, and he was electric and took his goals really well, and then he's carried it on. You're right. I think you look at the wingers we've had previously, like Jota and Abada. They contributed with a lot of goals and assists, and I think that's what was missing from our wingers last season. And now you can see that already, whether it's pre-season and in the two league games, he's getting in amongst the assists and the goals. Similar to Abada, like you say, creeping in at the back post there yesterday, following up the attack. But what he's also got is, like you say, a bit more maybe trickery, I think, than Abada did. Yeah, some of my frustrations with him is just that he doesn't shoot enough. He cuts in, he beats one, and then he beats another, and then he keeps going, and you're just wishing he gets that shot off a bit quicker. But I think that's something he'll work on. We've seen that he has got a decent shot on him when he executes it. So yeah, he's a guy that, like you said, last season, I don't think any of us wrote him off, but we just didn't see the best of him. And as you said, a lot of the issues were well documented. He lost a lot of weight when he had his dental surgery. So sometimes it just takes a bit of time for people to acclimatise. And look, it's only been a couple of games, so we can't get overboard. But we'll give credit where it's due, and he's definitely started the season as good as anyone. The winger position was something I was worried about and had it as a priority position. I still think we do need to sign someone. But just having the likes of him and James Forrest starting the season well, at least alleviates the concern that, we had a lot of time last season where none of the wingers were performing. And obviously Maida coming back as well was an encouraging one. So, yeah, Kuhn, O'Reilly, McGregor, all of them started yesterday so well. And it was a really joy to watch for much of that first half.
Yeah, and again, I'm looking at some of the things you've said there about Nicholas Kuhn. He is now at a club who are a massive club. We know that, Asim. I actually think that Celtic have the potential to be the biggest club in the world. People will scoff at that, right? But I don't think any other football club has got such a worldwide appeal. Now, you've got teams in English football who have gained that appeal through the fact that they're playing in the WWF League, the box office of the English Premiership, right? So you've got teams that 10, 15, 20 years ago on a worldwide stage, generally speaking, football fans hadn't heard of them. And Man City's one of the teams. Man City did not have that global attraction until the English Premiership went absolutely box office. Celtic are in a unique position in terms of the fan base all over the world and the Irish diaspora, wherever there's a pocket of Irish immigrants, third generation, fourth generation, there are Celtic supporters out there. And I think that when we talk about ourselves as a big club, it's on that we talk about it as, and we don't talk about it in respect to Scottish football, because we know that holds us back, and we'll get back to the Hibs situation with the ticketing. But the thing with Kuhn, and the point I'm trying to make here, is when you look at some of the clubs that he's been at, and he's failed to really fulfil his potential at clubs like Ajax, Bayern Munich, RB Leipzig. He's now at Celtic, and you think to yourself, right, there is an opportunity here for Nicholas Kuhn to fulfil his undoubted potential. You look at for example, some of the video footage of him when he was a young player at Ajax, so highly rated, didn't really break through. And it was the same, playing football for Bayern Munich second side, for example. He's only 24, and we're giving him this platform and saying, right, Champions League football this season, this guy can actually prove a lot of people wrong. And I sometimes think when you get that player who's got the hunger and something to prove, Celtic's the perfect club for it, Asim.
Yeah, I think we've got him just at the right time and at the right age. As you said, they're big clubs with big expectations that he's played at, and it would have been when he was younger. And I think he's mentioned before some of the players that he's played alongside, and it's no mean feat trying to get into those lineups. So he's obviously had a good couple of seasons or a spell at Rapid Vienna. And now this is a big step up. We know that the demands of Celtic playing in front of the home crowd, expected to perform week in, week out. And that's maybe where he just needed a bit of acclimatization last season. But he's going about it the right way. And you're right, what a stage, what a platform for him now to cement his place in the team. And with the Champions League format, as you said, 8 more games at the biggest stage. I'm really excited to see what he can do, because I think you're seeing it week on week. He's growing in confidence, he's growing in stature. He just looks like a player when he gets on the ball. You feel like something's going to happen. And if you remember the game at Easter Road last season, the one that kind of rejuvenated our title charge with Adam Ida's too, Nicholas Kuhn was really, really poor in that game. I think that was one of the games everyone was like, this guy's he's just not up to it, because he was really poor. And then you fast forward Easter Road yesterday, and he's one of our best players. So it just shows you're right. We do that with all players, though. I don't think we all make an opinion. Obviously, after you see a player a few times, you're going to make an opinion. But I don't think we just rule them off. Like, it's different when it's been season after season, and I'm sure we'll come on to Mikey Johnson later in the show at some point. But there's a difference between writing someone off at that stage or Nicholas Kuhn, who's been in the door 6 months. Yang as well is another one that we've seen now maybe for a wee bit longer, and we're still yet to see something from them. When players start showing that bit of promise, the fans will be on side. The fans are going to support them, and I think that's what we're seeing with Kuhn now.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, the other side of the coin in terms of wingers is Jamesy Forrest, of course. And I mean, that goal, when you rewind it to the initial pass by Kuhn, brilliant searching ball to Kyogo. Kyogo looked really sharp until obviously he started getting bundled about a wee bit. And he's taken a shot, rightly or wrongly, had a couple of options on. He's taken a shot, and obviously
he should have passed. He should have passed.
He should have, aye, without a doubt. And then you've got Jamesy following it up with all his experience, bags of experience, and he's an unselfish player. This is someone who he scored over 100 goals for the club. He's made over 100 goals for the club, but he's very unselfish as Jamesy Forrest. And the big thing for me, the key part of this move is the fact that Kuhn continues his run. So the initial ball that he plays, he's in his own half. and he finishes off the move. I mean, great team move, by the way, but Kuhn, just to have that desire to, like you say, do the Abada at the back post. But I want to talk for a wee minute about Jamesy. So Jamesy Forrest, he started both games. And, you think to yourself, wow, this time last season, if you told me next season that we're going to be starting with Jamesy, you would have probably thought, what's gone wrong? But it's all down to the fact that even at this stage of his career, and he's no ancient, let's put that out there, he is putting in performances, Acsom, that are sharp. He looks as though, he really is a player that can change a game now. 497 appearances for Celtic. If he plays in the next 3 games, not only does he enter the 500 club, right, he does it against Rangers in the first Glasgow derby. And this is a player who's been written off probably more than anybody else in the squad, Acsom.
Yeah, and I'll hold my hands up. I was one of them last season. I remember it was at Lazio away, and I was like, James Forrest can't be starting games for us anymore, because I don't know what it is, whether it's fitness or just confidence. Football is, when a player's confident, it's like they're a completely different player. And Forrest now, when he gets the ball, just looks like he's, as you say, bright and sharp, ready to take your guy on. And that just automatically makes the fullback's decision much more difficult, as in, do I get tight? Do I go close? Whereas last season, he seemed easier to play against in the early parts of last season. When he'd come on, it would be always a safe option. So it could be a number of things, whether it's movement off the ball, whether it's his own fitness and confidence. But whatever it is, it's working, and he's contributing, massively now. As we said at the start of the show, we're starting off with the positives. To me, I still don't think we should be in this situation where we've got, we're relying on James Forrest. But by all accounts, his performances are meriting a starting point at the moment. But our general recruitment and our squad depth should be better than having to put on Mikey Johnston at 60 minutes to come as a striker, or to have to rely on James Forrest to be putting in these performances still. Because I think he can be a valuable player this season and a squad player. But again, I just think, we shouldn't have to be relying on that. But on the flip side, 100%, he's playing well. And yesterday, you're right, decision making, I think that's something that's underrated in James Forrest. He makes the right decision a lot of the time. A lot of players maybe would have tried to cut in, shoot, or, like you say, be a bit more selfish. Even Kyogo at times, looking at it like that yesterday, wasn't great decision making. Ended up in a goal, but the pass was on, and it was quite an easy, clear pass that should have been played. I think Kyogo's desperate to kind of maybe break that away. Hoodoo, I wonder if that's playing in his head. But I thought he looked sharp still, Kyogo. And I'm sure we'll discuss his getting battered and bruised a bit more later in the show as well, and the concerns that raises in terms of our depth up front. But yeah, I think the front three all looking sharp yesterday, and it was good to see.
It was. By the way, I'm keeping a keen eye on the comments coming through. Thanks everybody for getting involved. Keep them coming. There are a lot of concerns in relation to recruitment. We're going to be discussing that, and it's not about trying to shy away from what sometimes is deemed to be negative chat. I don't think it is negative chat. We're looking at a scenario in relation to the wingers, for example, where at the start of the season, I said our strongest 11, Acsom, was with Kuhn on the right and Maeda on the left. Now, obviously, Maeda started the season injured. Last week, we learned yesterday that last week Palma picked up an injury near the end of the game. So he's going to be out for between 10 and 14 days. And then you're looking at it and thinking, right, straight away, we're a wee bit thin on the wings. When you think you're well covered, you think to yourself, right, Palma and Maeda on the left, Jamesy and Kuhn on the right, James can play both sides, etc. And then a couple of games in, and you're then bringing on Yang. Now, again, not singling him out, but I totally agree with you. I don't think we've seen that kind of breakout performance from a player like Yang, or a game whereby, the chips have been down and he's grabbed it by the scruff of the neck and won it for us. And he's a bit anonymous when he's coming into the play as well. And I think that in terms of the wingers, I wanted a winger. That was on my shopping list as a fan. Just as a fan, I thought if we could get a winger that could play both sides, then, that would really bolster our squad. Is it as much of a priority now, coming into the last bit of this transfer window, Acsom?
For me, yes. We're all enjoying how Celtic are playing at this point, and it really is. I think it's the same squad essentially, but we're playing like we've added a few signings. The way we're playing, it looks like it's a different team. Now that in itself is down to Brendan and the players and getting his messages across, and just that familiarity in itself can act like a new signing, as silly as it sounds. But we just look completely different from the tail end of last season to now. It's just been a much sharper, vibrant, fluent Celtic. You look back at the Kilmarnock game end of last season, it just seems like we're continuing that kind of form. That's night and day from this time last year. I remember the St Johnstone home game 0-0. It was a terrible watch. So it's encouraging, but we can't shy away from the fact that all it takes is a couple of injuries, and then you're having to rely on guys that haven't done it before again. And we've got big games coming up. You've got the League Cup next week. You've then got St Mirren away, and then the Derby, and then soon you'll have the Champions League games. All it takes is a couple of injuries. Kyogo, we've seen that yesterday. It was every time he goes down, you're worried. A left back injury, one of the wingers, and then you're having to rely on, like you say, Yang and Palmer, who we've seen. Okay, we want these guys to maybe come in and have another chance, but you don't want to be relying on them, and that's where you need guys to come in that are first team ready. And yeah, a winger's a priority for me. I stand by what I said a few weeks ago, and as we move each Monday, further forward, it's looking less and less likely. But I had my wish list of a centre back, a left back, a winger, a striker, and I still think we need another midfielder, because a lot of why we're playing so well is down to that midfield dynamic that we've got with Callum McGregor, Matt O'Reilly, and Rio Tati. You take Matt O'Reilly out of there, you're going to have to replace him with a really good player. And Bernardo, as much as I rate him, isn't that kind of player. So you take out a lot of what's making us tick right now by taking out Matt O'Reilly, and I think we're all resigned to the fact he's probably going to go. So that's another key priority position, and that's why it's really worrying that each Monday we're having the same. I said it last week at the end of the show. We'll have signed Adamida by then, but we've not. And it's getting frustrating. So I think we still need 5 positions, 5 players, and a winger's still one of them for me.
Well, this is it. It is a good time every week to say, where are we with Ida? And he's still not in the building. I think the player's done everything he can. And I'm guessing that he's been advised by his agent to, not down tools as such, but send out a message to Norwich. He wants to come to Celtic. Well, I think what we'll do when we're talking about Adamida is we'll link it into the confirmation that Johan Miovski's away to Girona. So that was made pretty clear over the weekend, and we're just expecting the big announcement and all that kind of stuff, right? So when you're looking at the situation, it would appear that there's 2 strikers we have been linked to quite extensively, actually, right? And one of them is obviously Ida, and I want that deal to go through. Another one was, since Brendan's came in, Miovski's been linked to Celtic. And not just because it's a lazy link. There's a guy scoring a lot of goals in Scotland. Celtic need a striker. The word was that Rodgers rated him. He'd had him scouted. He'd had him watched. Now, he's set to sign for Girona, I seen, for 6.8 million quid. Now, I've seen the social media reaction. Oh, a great fee, etc., etc. Right. But when you're scoring 26 goals for a struggling Aberdeen team, and you're 25 years of age, and you've scored in Europe and you've scored at international level, what do you expect to pay for a player, who's on that form? And this is a big thing. We've kind of been conditioned into thinking Celtic can get him for 3.5 million quid, which apparently was the bid that we did make, the maximum bid. You're not going to get him for 3.5 million. If you want that player, you're going to have to do what Girona did. Now, the thing is with that as well, I was just having a look at Girona, right? Their annual revenue during the period 2022-23 was 59.7 million euros, and Celtic's was 119.9 million pounds. The profit that Girona made was minimal, 0.7 million, 700,000 euros. Celtic's profit 40.7 million pounds. So if Girona can put a package together, and I'm just not, this is an example, and it's very similar to the Adamida example. If they can put together a package to buy a striker for about 7 million quid, so can Celtic. And this is my point. And this is the one I've been making. Maybe it's not Miovski. It might not even be Ida. But we can put that package together because we do have the finances to do it.
Yeah, there's no denying we've got the money to do it. It's whether, and I think we'll get Ida. I do think we'll sign him, and I think it will be for around a similar figure. Miovski's one that I've rated as well for a while. It's a good move for all concerned. I think it's a good move for him. Aberdeen have done well out of it. He's an international player as well. He scored at international level. Is it Macedonia? I'm not 100% sure. I think it's Macedonia he plays for, but I'm sure he scored goals for them. He scored in the Conference League for Aberdeen. So he's a player that you're right. You were never going to get him for any cheaper than that figure. It would be silly to even think that just because he's playing in Scotland. If we're expecting big money for Matt O'Reilly, and Brendan Rodgers said something similar, you're playing for the player, not the league that he's in, then we have to do similar if we were interested in Miovski. Now, I think in terms of how serious we were about him, I don't know, but I think there were comments that Rodgers did fancy him. I think we're just holding out for Ida. I don't know what the delay is. I don't know why. But I don't know if anyone who listened to yesterday's press conference, it seems like Rodgers' tone is changing as well. He's cutting a more frustrated figure, I think, week on week. And that's not going to go unnoticed as well. So it's just baffling that we're really risking this in terms of our striker position. There's no need for us to be in this predicament why did we sell O 3 weeks ago and not have a replacement?
Exactly.
And everyone thought when O was going, and usually that's the case. When one goes out, then that's when we see someone coming in. That was over 3 weeks ago now, and yet we're still having to rely on Mikey Johnston coming on in the 60th minute because Kyogo's struggling. It's baffling. It's negligent because it could really cost us in the coming weeks. Because all it takes is, like you say, an injury, and then he's out, and then you're having to play Mikey Johnston. Things don't go well, and you're out of a League Cup, for example. And I'm not saying it should just come down to that one situation, but why are we so ill prepared? Where you're 3 weeks into the season now and you've got one striker in the books.
See, the big thing for me, Acsom, I've heard every excuse in the book. And what it sounds to me is that it's easy for them. It's easy for a football club to say, it's not easy to do business in January. It's not easy to do business in the summer. Well, when is it then? When do you sign players? I don't buy it. I really don't. It doesn't cut the mustard for me. And I go back to our previous chairman, Ian Bankier, who basically had this bungling kind of attitude towards Europe that, we just can't compete, so why try? And it's like you have got a department, albeit a completely dysfunctional recruitment department, in place. There are people in the scouting team, etc. You've got a manager who's obviously told you that for the last season and a bit that he needs quality. And if we can't get the job done, whose position is it that should then be questioned? Because, for example, it was a great point that Jim Orr made. It's difficult to get transfers done, is it? I tell you what's difficult. It's difficult to pay for a season ticket for a working class individual. That's difficult. In particular, when there's multiple season tickets in a household, that's difficult, right? But the fans managed to do it. The fans managed to pay the money. The fans managed to go out and buy the merchandise. We have done everything in our power as supporters to put the club in a position where we can be successful. Now it's over to them. What was the last email you received from Celtic? I'll tell you what it was. It was this morning selling us £25 tickets for the League Cup game against Hibs.
I was going to say, do you think there's another team in the Champions League, forget even the Champions League, in European football right now, that's 3 weeks into their season or even approaching their season that's got one striker on the books? I just don't think it is. I don't think there is. And that's unacceptable, right? Like you say, it might be difficult to do business in January or whatever excuses they come out with. But to be 3 weeks into your season and have one striker on your books, there's no justification for it. No. And whoever's responsible for that, its heads have got to turn, because that's not on. Honestly, it's baffling, and it's going to cost us if we don't get this fixed. And it's we managed to pull out 2 really good performances, but you're honestly having to rely on Kyogo 90 minutes against Kilmarnock. He probably would have played 90 minutes again yesterday if he didn't get injured. At which point is it going to are they going to realise that this is going to end up costing us?
No, this is the biggest problem. And again, we're going to be touching on recruitment as we go through the discussion in the next 40 minutes. But how did we identify Ida? Because Rodgers knew of the player during his time down in England. How did we know about Miovski? Well, he's playing on our doorstep. That isn't recruitment. That's just knowing players because they're right in front of your eyes. Recruitment for me is being able to cast a much wider net. We tapped into a market that we hadn't touched since the days of Nakamura and Koki Mizuno. Every time I mention Nakamura, people say, but we signed them from Italy. Yeah, but Japanese player who came from the J League. And we haven't used that market since Ange Postecoglou left. Why? You look at the Citigroup connection that gave us players like Jeremy Frimpong, Dedrick Boyata, Olivier Ncham, and others. Why are we not tapping into that? You look at the way that Ange Postecoglou not only used his own specialist knowledge of the Japanese football, but he also tapped into his contacts within CAA Base, one of the biggest agencies in world football, to identify other players. Why are we not doing that? It seems to be down to Brendan and Brendan's contacts. And that, for me, you're so limited there, particularly when you consider that the only market Brendan knows is English football. And one of the most expensive markets out there is English football. That's a massive issue for us.
Yeah, and you wonder if Brendan's fully in control here and is the one that's basically saying, look, it's going to be his way in terms of his signings, his ones that he wants, and that's why things are so dry at the minute, because he's waiting for that last couple of weeks of the English transfer window that he knows best. And then in that case, then you have to ask, is he to blame as well for this? Because if that's what's happening here and he's basically vetoing any of suggestions that he's getting because he doesn't trust who he's been suggested after last year and he's waiting to see what his own contacts bring in, then that's on him as well. But I guess that's where the frustration's coming from fans, because we don't know what's going on. And all we see is a squad that's not fully equipped for where it should be at this stage of the season. So, no one's getting away with this scot-free here, because I don't think we can all just clearly say it's not, it's nothing to do with Brendan. He's the one that's getting annoyed. He's obviously got some say in it as well. He does sound more and more frustrated each week. But again, if you look at the language he's used now, it's hopefully we'll strengthen. This shouldn't be a case of hopefully. It's a case of it has to be. So
God willing. God willing.
Yeah.
Brendan, come on.
So yeah, some of the language is changing. His tone, he seemed a bit more snappy in his press conference yesterday. We need a bit more communication. We need a bit more transparency as to what's going on, because right now it just looks like it's a bit of a free for all. Nobody really knows what they're doing.
And they've given us a glimpse of what we can do and what this squad can do, and particularly the starting 11, because there really is a lack of depth in the squad. And then you get that glimpse and you think, oh, we could really do something here. Just get 3 or 4 players of real quality into that squad and we can do something. And if we don't, then it just builds that frustration. And if Celtic want to do their business in the last 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 hours of the window and then think, I told you so, you shouldn't have panicked. No, you should not be doing business like this. Right, let's get some of your comments in. We're 1,100 strong on a Monday afternoon talking all things Celtic. Thanks every one of you for tuning in. If you haven't done so already, give us a thumbs up on the YouTube and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications bell. We have got some big guests coming up on This Is Acsom as well on a Friday night. And all the content is absolutely free. The Urban Culture. Players will play in any league in the world if the money is right. Career always comes second to money in most cases. At the very extreme end of that point that you make, the Urban Culture, you just got to look at the amount of players that have gone to the Saudi Arabian leagues to prove that, yeah, money talks. Celtic have got it. I'm not saying that we spend £25 million on a player, but what I am saying is the type of player that Miovski or Ida or similarly valued players are, we should not think or balk at the transfer fees, because we should be in that market. Paul McQuaid, by the way, I said this, Paul.
How good did that look?
See, when you see the players and it's fully kitted out,
yeah,
it does look different, and it's a belter of a kit. I know I have been very critical of some of the Adidas efforts, but it's up there, Acsom, isn't it?
It was, and I said last week, on a nice sunny day it'll look good, and it was. And the shorts, I really like the colour of the shorts as well. I thought it was a really nice looking top. So yeah, that was an encouraging thing. But yeah, just to kind of talk a bit more about even the performance, I think the way we started that game, it really does give encouragement, because I feel like everyone's kind of playing with a much higher tempo now. It's completely different from last season. So something's working. Rodgers is getting his message across. I know he didn't like one of the Clyde One guys saying to him, bringing up the whole, that's a Rodgers team, that's a Brendan team again. Or I think he had to correct the guy, didn't he? And what he referred it to. But it really is. You're looking at a team now that reminds me of the way we were in that first season under Rodgers when he first came in. Just completely dominant, on and off the ball, rarely threatened. I don't think Kasper Schmeichel's had a save to make yet in 2 games. It was great seeing his celebration as well. He must be getting bored because he's got nothing to do. But he's really taken to being at Celtic, and he looks so good on the ball. I think that's one of the really noticeable things, how good he is on the ball. I know he had one kind of misplaced pass, but other than that, just looks really assured. I think the defence look really comfortable with him there on the ball as well, and he can pick out kind of longer chip passes as well. So, look, in that respect, the one bit of recruitment that we have done, brilliant. but we need to back that up across the pitch because we've got the nucleus of a really good side there. Callum McGregor back to his best. What a strike. I'm sure we'll talk about that as well. So a lot to be positive about. It's just a shame because right now, if this, under normal circumstances, all the fans right now would be absolutely purring and buzzing with how we're going. It's just this kind of dark cloud that's over us a wee bit as to what's the hold up? Why are we not doing the business? And as you say, it might even come in the last week or so, but it's just not the way to be it's not the way to run a club, really, is it?
No, and we should have been on a cycle when it comes to transfers, whereby we're bringing guys in the knowledge that, like Kuhn, it might take a wee bit of time for them to settle. So we're not bringing them in, then throwing them straight into a game against Rangers. And like you say, then the Champions League games are just round the corner. Callum McGregor, then, wow. Well, that's all I can say. So in the same week that he retires from international football at the age of 31, he scores one of the finest goals that he scored in a Celtic jersey. I'm sure you will agree. By the time that he enters the 500 club at some point in this season, he will be the 14th player, because I'm pretty sure he will be joining Jamesy Forrest. It's incredible that we've got a couple of guys in the modern age that are one club men. I know that he had a brief spell out on loan. This is his 11th season as a first-team player, and he's averaging over 46 games a season. And for me, people say, oh, he's got 1 or 2 seasons left in him. I know that there's a regression, especially when you play the game the way that Scott Brown played the game or the way that Callum McGregor plays it. But he's 31, and I'm not sure he's only got 1 or 2 seasons in him yet. He still looks really fresh. And, of course, he's retired from international football fairly early as well, Acsom. I think, he can go on for another good 3 or 4 seasons at this rate.
Yeah, he's such a clever player, and I think with players in that kind of position, it's what they mentally they're steps ahead of the opposition. He knows what he's going to do before he's got the ball, and you can kind of manage your game a bit more effectively. So I think he's got plenty more years in him, and I think the retirement will help him out in that sense as well. I think Steve Clarke was in attendance yesterday, and you'll be like looking at that thinking, oh no, what are we going to miss? Because you look at the last few years where Scotland have had a bit more success. Callum McGregor's been a big, massive part of that.
Yeah.
He's been part of that squad and that midfield, the likes of John McGinn, that's been really effective. So I think there's plenty more to come from Callum, and he's got that in him, that kind of strike. If you remember, he used to score lots of goals for us with that left foot. When he first broke into the team under Dyla, remember him scoring 2 or 3 goals in his first few games, away at Warsaw, away at Reykjavik, that left foot. And then there was a couple of seasons ago at Aberdeen, so he's still got that in him. And maybe that's something he can work on as well, because he's got a good left foot on him. So if he can get a few more goals this season, add to the kind of array of options we've got. It reminded me that goal of another one at Easter Road many years back, Lubo Moravcik, left foot, and a white. I think it was in that white kit that we used to have, a white away kit, left foot, very little back lift, top corner. That's what it kind of reminded me of as well. Even the angle behind the goals. Contender for goal this season already. And at that point at 2-0, you're really thinking we can motor on and really score 4 or 5, and we really should have. We had so many different chances, but it was a scintillating first half hour or so.
Yeah, you're right. And every single time I think of that goal, it's the jersey that I remember, that Moravcik goal at Easter Road, man. And that goal yesterday, when I was watching how controlled McGregor was, sweet strike. I'm thinking back even to the double treble Scottish Cup final. Kevin Graham and I call it the Compare final, because we had an opportunity to meet Marvin Compare, and he did exist. And and it's one of the things, actually, because we talk about transfers and all that kind of stuff, but he, for me, in a nutshell, is what was wrong first time round. We were basically presenting these guys to Rodgers. And I guess that's why I was surprised last season when Brendan did that press conference where he said, I'm presented with players and then I coach them and I get the best out of them. And I thought to myself, that's all right if your recruitment is on the nose, which it clearly had not been for a wee while by that stage. So that's the goal that it reminded me of yesterday. Now, you've mentioned Kyogo Furuhashi, and I want to talk about him. But before I do that, after the game, and indeed on the socials, there was a lot of flack coming in for the usual. Targets, would I call them targets? Probably. Gary Doonan comes in to say, another decent display, and yet Scales and Taylor bashing continues. Anybody wanted to talk about CCV's lapses yesterday? And the big thing for me is, we had a chat after the game, Acsom, whereby if you compare where we are defensively, so you look at the back five, right, defensively right now, and you compare it to where we were at the beginning of the last season, where it was pretty chaotic, particularly in the central defensive areas, where it's like every single game we had a different partnership. We had brought in 3 new central defenders, one of whom was an emergency loan buy, and from that madness came Liam Scales being the first pick. We had to wait for Carter Vickers to come back from injury, and basically that has been the partnership ever since. If they're fit, they play. They're the first picks. You've got on the right-hand side, Johnston thought he took a dull one yesterday. Hopefully he's all right. Not had much of a pre-season. And on the left, Taylor, who started the season off pretty well. And then behind them, arguably, you've got, I'm saying arguably because we'll come back to this time and time again throughout the season, arguably an upgrade in Kasper Schmeichel. Now, I know he's not had much to do so far, but I'm talking and I'm basing that really on the goalie that we bought. You know, the performances last season, you know, when you look at when we signed Joe Hart, he'd been out of the international scene for a long time. He had played 10 games of football the season before we signed him. He was basically out at grass. Schmeichel has come in, you know, and he's already just captain Denmark in the Euros, etc. So I think arguably, and we'll come back to it, we've got the goalkeeper in place, and the defence is far more settled. We've had 2 clean sheets. Now, I think it's okay, right, to say we're doing pretty well. And it's also okay to say we do need to upgrade left centre-back and left-back, particularly the fact we only have one left-back, Acsom. You can't run with one left-back.
Yeah.
But you can do that without criticising the players, per se. I mean, Scalesy, there was a couple of things that he didn't do too well yesterday, but there was plenty of other things defensively that he did do well. So they do seem to be the go-to guys when we're criticising Celtic. That seems to be the way at the moment.
Yeah, I know that's the way it comes across. But the left back position is something we've been saying for years, unanimously across the board when it comes to fans. Everyone's been saying that, and as you said, we've now only got one in the club, so we need one. And of course, you should be looking to try and upgrade in every position. We said this week in, week out. You know, that's the aim. Every position you're looking to try and strengthen and upgrade, and centre back and left back are 2 of those positions. The thing someone mentioned, Cameron Carter-Vickers, he had a few slack moments yesterday, but it was similar to when McGregor had a bit of off form, last season. I think there's certain players that they need to be cut a bit of slack because they've been that consistent for that length of time, and they're that important to our team that, of course, everyone's going to go through spells where they may have a bad game. And Cameron Carter-Vickers, I think, still easily our best centre back, and he had a couple of slack moments yesterday, but other than that, he's still someone you feel really confident having there. So, it's not about comparing the criticism that Scales gets to Carter Vickers or the criticism that another midfielder gets to Callum McGregor. It's about trust and reliability and just knowing what you're going to get from certain players. And with Liam Scales, I've said it week in, week out, and I'll say it again. I think he's a good squad player. He's done really well in his time. He's taken his chance. But do I think we can do better? Yes. That's all it is. I'm not the one that suddenly jumps on him when he makes a mistake. No, I think he's got his limitations, and they get flagged up every now and again because that is his level. But I think he can improve, and I think he can be an effective player for us. He'll play plenty of games, but I do think those are 2 positions where, especially in Europe, I think domestically we're fine. But again, our barometer is Europe, and it is every season. We speak about it every year, and that's where teams seem to target that area of the pitch. We've seen it with Greg Taylor going back as far as Bodo Glimt a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now. Liam Scales actually had some of his best performances in the Champions League last season, so I can't say that. But generally, it's an area that you want people to be of that same standard as your Cameron Carter-Vickers, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that.
No, and the big thing as well, when we talk about Carter-Vickers and when he does make mistakes, he's not been challenged. All the time he's been at Celtic, he's not had somebody breathing down his neck for the first team jersey. Acsom. Carter-Vickers is guaranteed a position every single week. And I think that what you do in a scenario like that, if you bring in a top-class player, is you can enhance the one that's trying to hold on to their jersey. And I think we've seen it in the past when we were bringing in top-quality players, and Jamesy Forrest a few years ago, his levels went up. I think that if you've got a striker, you bring in another striker, Kyogo's levels will go up. And on Kyogo, I think he's looked really sharp in the 2 games, and my biggest concern, like everybody, he goes down. He's holding that troublesome shoulder there was another moment where he goes down and it's his ankle, and you think to yourself, listen, this is maybe cynical. I think he'll be targeted, Acsom. I think that if you're a manager and you're sitting rock bottom, or you're really, really scratching about for points, and you think, take Kyogo out, because look what they've got on the bench. Mikey Johnson, who's not an out-and-out striker, no criticism or personal attacks on Mikey Johnson. He's not the answer behind Kyogo. So I'm not saying go in and try and break his leg, but, knock him over, be tough, be hard, hit him hard early on, all this kind of stuff. We've seen it happening in the past. I remember a game against Rangers where Yakimakis ends up coming on within the first 10 minutes because, So I do have my concerns there. And I also think that there was a wee bit of frustration creeping in with Kyogo's game yesterday. Some of that was due to the service that he felt he should have been getting. And then he comes off the park and you're worried. You're worried when he comes off the park, Acsom, and we shouldn't be. We're Celtic Football Club. We should have at least 2 strikers. But I'm going to go back to the decision to sell O. Right, okay, it was a good offer. It would appear that Brendan Rodgers didn't rate the player, but we're now running on empty. We're running on Kyogo having to play every single game. And if he doesn't, then you're calling on Mikey Johnson. Mikey Johnson gets injured, don't know how bad the eye injury is, and you're looking at Maeda. But Maeda has to play on the left because Palm was injured. We're 2 games in. And it's all starting to unravel. Yeah,
to juggle people about and stuff. I don't know, like I said earlier, I don't know why that O move was sanctioned if we did not have something imminently in place. I don't know if there's been a delay with Ida or what, but like that shouldn't be the case. Because we were talking about it, we thought we needed 3 strikers. We've obviously let Rocco Vata go, we've let O go, and we've now got Mikey Johnson as your backup. And as you said, if you then start moving Maeda up front, you're short on the wings. So whatever way you look at it, we are inadequately prepared. And Kyogo's shoulder is, it doesn't seem like it's something that's ever kept him out for too long, but it's an ongoing issue, an ongoing concern. And if you're opposition defenders, you know that a wee shoulder barge and it could cause a bit of trouble, then of course managers might be saying that to their defenders, give him one early and let's see what he's made of. So it's a concern. I don't know what the update on it is with after the game. I don't know what Rodgers said, if it's something they need to keep an eye on or if it's just a precaution. But that's the worry now. You've got big games coming up, and you're possibly Mikey Johnson may be injured as well. So you're down to the bare bones.
And it is a concern, and we're being linked to various other players as well. If we get Ida in on a permanent, then we're probably looking to bring in somebody else on loan, just so that we've got the depth that we require. Now, obviously, Matt O'Reilly is on everybody's mind at the moment in relation to the future, and we're probably expecting a few more bids this week, Acsom. And the big thing, and I've heard it said by a lot of people, fair play to Matt O'Reilly for just continually approaching his job the way that he does. He just gets, he still goes in there. He's no down in tools. He's no throwing the toys at the pram. But the one thing I mentioned last week, and I want your thoughts on this one, Acsom, is we were up at the Bernardo press conference. So he's joined permanently. And the question that came in for Tino at the Celtic Exchange was around his position. And basically he was adamant he's an attacking midfielder. And what I read between the lines there is, a lot of people are concerned that if and when O'Reilly goes, Bernardo steps into that berth. And I don't think naturally he's that type of player. But again, the point was made yesterday. Matt O'Reilly's goal contributions weren't great 2 seasons ago. Yeah. So it is something that can be worked on. Where are you with that? Because I don't see him as a typical attacking midfielder. We've seen elements of his play, but I think he's more of a deep lying midfield player. McGregor, Alan Morrison's spoken about how his performances can regress as he's age, as he gets that wee bit older. How do you see the future of that Celtic midfield if indeed Matt O'Reilly was to leave? And obviously we'd be looking to bring somebody in, but where does Bernardo fit in?
Well, he's set the tone with that kind of comment. He's basically said that's where he sees himself. So then he would need to obviously back it up. He played a lot of his good games for us last season in the kind of bigger games, the Champions League, the Derby games, as a deep lying player. But whether that was because Matt O'Reilly was in that position that he wanted, He did end up. There was that spell around about Christmas, just after New Year, where he chipped in with a few goals, Bernardo. So it could be something that he develops and improves on. Like you say, I'm similar to you. I didn't see him as that kind of goal scoring midfielder, but neither was Matt O'Reilly when he first came in, and he's gradually worked on that, and that's something maybe Rodgers will do with Bernardo as well. Technically very good, works hard. So if he's adamant that's his position, then that's a good sign that he's confident in himself, and he'll need to then go out and back himself up in there. But you then look at a midfield of Rio, Bernardo, and McGregor, and then behind that, if one of them's out, you've got Home or Iwata. For me, I still think we're one short then again. I think if Matt O'Reilly goes, we need to use a fair chunk of the money to buy a Matt O'Reilly replacement, personally. Whether we do that or not remains to be seen, probably unlikely. But you can't keep on selling your best players every summer and not replacing them. We didn't replace Jota because none of the wingers were even close. And if we then sell Matt O'Reilly when Bernardo was already in the window in the club last season and didn't really cement a first team place, selling Matt O'Reilly and then not replacing him for me is not good enough either. So I would be looking for us to bring in another midfielder to basically push the three of them, because I don't think that in itself is enough. And for me, Iwata, he comes in, does a good job, but again, he's not someone I would trust to start games regularly for us.
No, and he's a player that I've talked up quite a bit since he came to the club, I've seen. But I think that when he's given his opportunity, he's steady. He's a steady player, but I don't think he's that level of quality. And you said there we didn't replace Jota. You're right, we didn't. Nowhere near replace him. We brought in a lot of wingers, didn't replace him with the same quality. Who did we bring in? We brought in Tilio, Yang, Palma, and Kuhn. That's the wingers we brought in. Kuhn could be one of the guys that we're salvaging from last season, but nowhere near the kind of levels.
And remember, we've lost Abada as well. Abada as well. So £35 million worth of winger, and you've, like you say, you've bought in about 4 for what, 10 million less, and one of them might be good enough.
One of them,
so you can see where we're going wrong.
That's the approach, though, and this is the frustration. It's like we'll bring in 4, and hopefully one of them will work. That's not how we can approach this. And it was similar with Starfelt. We promoted from within William Scales, and he's done really, really well. And he's been given the plaudits from Brendan Rodgers, who says in his entire career, he's a standout in terms of a player that's come through and done what he's done when he's been written off. He's got his international recognition. But let's be honest, we brought in 3 centre halves, not one of them worked. Nat Phillips, Nawrocki, Lagerbielke to replace Carl Starfelt, and none of them worked. So you're right, we need to make sure that we replace, and it can't be like for like, because we'll never spend £25 million on a player, but we need to bring somebody in who may well develop into that player. And I'm not expecting them to get them for £1.5 million either, Asim, but someone in that middle range that we are able to nurture, develop, and then maybe in a season or two, he does show you the kind of star quality that O'Reilly's got, because we simply can't replace him like for like, but we can bring in quality, and the quality has to be. It's going to cost us a few quid, of course it is. But why are we afraid to spend that money?
Yeah, it's going to cost us upwards of I know you get your Matt O'Reillys, and that turned out to be what a bargain. But that happens. They're the ones that you supplement the squad with those kind of ones, but to get first team players in ready, you're going to have to spend upwards of 6-7 million sometimes to get guys that are already playing at a good level in good leagues, or established themselves as steady players that when they come in, they're going to be able to handle it at Celtic. Obviously, there's no surefire thing, but we spoke about it before, the kind of profile and calibre of player that we should be looking at. And it's not going to come at your £2 million bracket. It's time for us to up that bracket. And it just seems like we don't know how to do that. We don't know how to effectively utilise that market where players are costing upwards of between 6 to 10 million. We're only used to this market of the £2 million, £3 million, and that's all we know. At any time, we've tried a few, but most of the ones that we bought that are above that have been loan ones that we then went and bought. We very rarely go and buy someone without having already had them at the club for a big fee. Christopher Julian was probably the last one, but the other 3, Edward, Jota and CCV. We only did that because we already had them in. We're just so risk averse to actually spend that because we're worried it's not going to work out. But we'd rather spend the same amount on 4 players and none of them work out. So the more you think about it, the more you wonder, is Rodgers just really, really waiting to get the guys that he wants in rather than people that have been suggested or scouted for him? And that's the hold-up. Because if that's the case, then yeah, it's going to be the last week of the window, isn't it? And he's going to get his contacts or his kind of players in. And who knows what they'll cost. But that's the only explanation here for why the hold-up.
I share your fear on that one, I've got to say. Liam Devine, welcome to the show. It's a busy one today. We're up at 1100 on the live stream, and Liam says, going into the next window, whoever's job it becomes to do deals understands deals must be done or they will be dealt with similarly. The problem we've got, Liam, as we've been discussing, is we do have a completely dysfunctional recruitment structure at the moment where a head of department doesn't exist. It's not been replaced. Mark Lawwell has not been replaced. And from there downwards, it's going to cause issues, isn't it? Especially when we get into the rough and tumble fixture after fixture, then 2 fixtures a week. Brendan Rodgers is concentrating on a hell of a lot more than just recruitment. And you need to have that in place. We don't have it in place. And it needs to be in place for the next window, for sure. David Boyle, second half proved yesterday we seriously lack depth. Well, no movement happening, still asleep at the wheel. I was going to bring this up because obviously the 2 I highlighted was we bring on Johnston up top, we bring on Yang, who has flattered to deceive at the moment for me. I think if we get an opportunity to loan him out, I would take it. And that does show the kind of wafer-thin predicament we find ourselves in. Is it also the reason why we go from slick in the first half sometimes to a bit slack in the second half?
Yeah, Rodgers seemed quite unhappy with how the game panned out, and that's good to see. I want to see him demanding that, because we've seen that a lot last season. We've seen Jekyll and Hyde type performances, and I don't think it was to that extent. You know, there was halves last season where it went from abysmal, either first half abysmal and then second half better, or the other way around. And I don't think that was that yesterday. I think we still created plenty of chances in the second half, which was encouraging to see. We missed them. I think had we got that third goal, it would have been easy street. But in saying that, yeah, Hibs naturally were going to improve. I think they were really poor the first half, so they had a bit more of a go. But tiredness as well, I think, crept in. And yeah, as soon as you take off, that's the worry. That's what we've been saying. This first team of ours looks good right now, with everyone fully fit and firing. But all it takes is an injury or taking a couple of players off, and the depth just isn't there. Naturally, a bit of tiredness as well maybe have crept in. But I think, yeah, that's where we need to be careful, because going forward, it can quickly change. And we've seen that last season. Things can change so quickly. All it takes is a poor performance, and then fans are on the back. Right now, we should be using this feel-good factor of the way the team's playing, the victories, and really use that momentum. If you look at it 2 seasons ago under Ange, the second season, we went into the Champions League with real momentum. Why? Because everyone was feeling good. We were playing well. We had that 9-0 victory over Dundee United, 4-0 against Rangers. Everything was just in a good place, and we went into that campaign full of energy and positivity. And obviously, we got beat by Real Madrid, but you remember that game and that night, and it was it felt like something special could happen. We were just short, but it feels like we could do something similar now, because the players are firing. We're looking good. It just needs that extra few additions just to get everyone really pulling in the same direction, because right now it just feels like there's still that air of frustration in the background, and I do feel like the drop off from the first team is quite stark to when you bring on the replacements, and you've seen that yesterday again, second half. Still thought we managed the game effectively. We didn't really give too much away, 1 or 2 chances, but even Rodgers seemed pretty disappointed with the second half performance at times.
Yeah, and I'm the same. If the gaffer comes out and he's not happy, and he's being snippy and all that, I'm happy with that, because it means that he's not getting what he is kind of demanding either on the pitch or off it. Joe Hamilton, welcome to the show, Joe. We can moan and groan all we want, and it won't change a thing. Let's see what Brendan can do these next weeks. In the meantime, we should have respect for the players in the team who are given 100%. And I think that one of my biggest issues after a game, particularly, is if you do talk about some of the more the deeper underlying reasons why Kyogo goes off and Johnson comes on. It comes down to the recruitment we've been banging on about, and not just this pre-season either. But there is a section of people who have a train of thought where it is, just let them do it. It's going to be fine. Keep the faith. And I just think that's a dangerous platform to be on, because then if it's not done, all you hear are these excuses. It's hard to do business. It's tough. Everybody in Europe's finding it tough. Well, that would suggest to me you don't have the right people in place to do the deals. That would suggest to me that you don't have a recruitment team that's functioning properly. So then it becomes the board's issue to sort that out. At this moment in time, it's over to the people who have got the responsibility, and we know the deals are done by Michael Nicholson and Chris Mackay, but the players are currently being identified by Brendan Rodgers and our head of scouting. So Brendan Rodgers is working almost like a head of recruitment. It's not good enough. And we can't just let them away with it either. If we don't come through this window with sufficient reinforcements, with the turbocharged that we're talking about in the tagline, then somebody has to be held account to that.
Yeah, and I've seen that as well, whether it's in comments or on social media. It's very, I wouldn't say split. I think it's the majority are similar to us, enjoying the football, enjoying the positive side of things, but very aware. And look, you have to be reactive. You have to be proactive as a club, but not reactive. Right now is the best time to address the issues because we're playing well. We're in a good spot. Now's the time to really put the foot down rather than wait until things don't go so well, and then you're like, we should have done this. We've seen this coming. We've just got a bit of foresight right now that we can see that with a few injuries or down the line, when we're up against better opposition, it's not going to be as plain sailing, and it's about equipping yourself with the right tools to make sure you're ready to tackle that challenge, and that's all it is. These two games, the first two games of the season, it's been a brilliant start, but now's the time to really, really hammer home that dominance, not just domestically, because again, we can't be complacent just because they've got issues across the city. We all know how things can change, and we all know that the caliber of the teams in this league aren't great. That it's going to be easy for us just to expect them to drop points every week. They're still probably more likely to win a lot of their games, so it's still going to be a title race. And I think it's important for us not to get complacent and just think, it's fine. And as we keep saying, domestic dominance is great. We love it. But it's about time we start showing a bit of ambition so that we can compete in this new Champions League format. We spoke about the new format and how it can benefit us and actually give us probably a better chance than previous seasons under the old system to actually get to a knockout stage in this competition. And all it takes is, but it's going to take 3 or 4 signings. And I say 3 or 4, I think 5 to really put us in a good position for that.
But then again, if it's money that motivates the people who are counting the beans, you're going to make more of that stuff if you do well in Europe. Yeah. So
the more points you gain, the more merch, the more an extra couple of games. Absolutely. There's nothing to lose. There's nothing to lose from it. And again, we were making. There was a chat of Bosun Lowell going as well for a good fee. I don't know if is that done or it was on the verge, but
yeah. 2 to 3 million quid for a fringe player.
For a fringe player, the money is coming in, and that's again 2 to 3 million, like you say, for a fringe player, and then that's the kind of fees that we then expect to go and get first team players with. It just doesn't add up.
If we get close to 3 million for Bosun Lowell and we lowballed Aberdeen for Miovski at 3.5, then I think that speaks volumes. Now, before we go, I just want to say there are many, many occasions as a Celtic supporter where I'm proud of my fellow fans, and the weekend was another one. Created by immigrants was the banner. That's what it read. And you look at the ability for Celtic supporters to look at a scenario, a worldwide global issue, and be on the right side of what will become, something we'll look back on and say, we knew, and we were on the right side of that particular piece of history. So when I look at the banner at the weekend at Easter Road, on the one hand, I'm going, wow, absolutely proud of my fellow supporters. Just like when I think about my old fella back in a completely different scenario, but in terms of the political nature of my old fella and all his fellow miners going on strike, being up against a Tory government led by Margaret Thatcher. And you still meet these people now and you've got immense respect for them because, they are oppressed in different ways, obviously, but oppressed, and the oppressed as a people that Celtic fans, I think, will always stand up for, and we continue to do it. Doesn't matter how much flack. You imagine, you think back to the amount of flack Celtic fans got last season. We were banned. A section of our support were banned from the stadium, Asim. And there we are at the weekend again, still truly believing in the root cause of this. And I take my hat off to them every single time. Phenomenal display.
Yeah, pride is exactly the word I would use when I seen those. It's something I show to all my non-Celtic supporting fans, and it's something that gives you immense. You're right. It's something that you can look at and just be like, you're glad just to be a part of that. And it's always been the case ever since I've supported Celtic. They always stand up for, as you say, the oppressed, and it was just beautiful to see, and that's been shared all over social media, and it just shows Celtic fans for what they are. And you hear stories. When my dad first came to this country, it's one of the main reasons he got into Celtic. As a young boy coming over, just that sense of community, that sense of welcoming, and it's something that he just took to right away, and he's passed on through the generations. So yeah, it was a fitting banner, and no less than what you'd expect from Celtic fans.
No, absolutely. Keep it up. Everybody involved. Brilliant. Superb display. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. Listen, we're watching a really bright and fluid Celtic side right now. I'm not want to put a dampener on that in any way, shape or form. I've really enjoyed the fact that we've started the season off at a bit of a canter. 2 wins on the bounce, no goals conceded. But go and give us a few players before the transfer window closes and keep us happy and give us that momentum. Sees us through September, some tricky ties in September, of course. Thanks, every single one of you, 1,100 strong on the live stream. Everybody that's commenting, give us a big thumbs up on the YouTube and subscribe to the channel. All that's left for me to say thank you again, Asim Rabbani, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.